Ah, the Wild West. A land of rugged cowboys, daring gunslingers, and epic battles of good versus evil. Right? Wrong. What if I told you almost everything you think you know about the Wild West is just a Hollywood fantasy? Today, we're unraveling the story of the American West. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Let's start with the iconic image of the lone gunslinger, the heroic cowboy who rides into town, ready to draw at high noon. Sounds cool, but it's mostly myth. In reality, cowboys were just cattle herders. Yup, wrangling cows, not dueling in dusty streets. Towns even had strict gun regulations to keep the peace. And yes, figures like Wyatt Earp and Bass Reeves were famous lawmen, but they were exceptions, not the rule. In fact, most cowboy work was grueling, dirty, and far removed from the glamorous portrayals in Hollywood. Cowboys spent long hours driving cattle across treacherous terrain, often battling extreme weather, disease, and isolation. Their days were filled with hard labor, not heroic standoffs or saloon brawls. For many, the role of a cowboy was simply a job, a means to an end, not the romanticized adventure we see on screen. Adding to the reality check, the archetype of the lone gunslinger often ignores the collaborative nature of life in the West. Communities were vital for survival, with people relying on each other to build towns, share resources, and maintain order. The romantic image of an independent drifter was largely a Hollywood invention, overshadowing the fact that cowboys were often part of larger crews or ranching operations. The real West was a story of teamwork and resilience, not lone wolf heroics. Next, the infamous cowboys versus Indians trope. The truth? Cowboys didn't fight Native Americans, the US government did. It was a calculated campaign of conquest, from violent military force to wiping out millions of bison to cripple native economies. Add in disease, and it was less of a battle and more of a tragic annihilation. The government's approach was systematic and ruthless, utilizing tactics designed to destabilize native societies. The destruction of the bison, a critical resource for many native tribes, was one of the most devastating strategies. Bison populations, which once numbered in the tens of millions, were reduced to near extinction within a few decades. This deliberate act not only eliminated a vital food source but also disrupted cultural practices, spiritual traditions, and entire ways of life for native communities. On top of this, westward expansion was enforced through broken treaties and violent military campaigns. Tribes were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands and relocated to reservations, often on barren, unproductive land where survival was nearly impossible. The cultural impact was catastrophic, with entire generations losing their homes, traditions, and identities. What Hollywood painted as a noble struggle between cowboys and Native Americans was, in reality, a deeply uneven and tragic process of displacement and domination. Was the West truly lawless? Not really. In fact, it was heavily managed. Government-backed railroads, military enforcement, and strict laws shaped these communities. Sure, there were outlaws, but most of the wild stories were exaggerated or outright made up. The reality? The West was an organized effort to expand and develop. The construction of railroads, heavily subsidized by the US government, was a cornerstone of this organization. These railways connected remote areas to bustling cities, enabling the transport of goods, people, and resources. Towns often sprang up along rail lines, strategically planned to support commerce and settlement. The federal government also played a critical role by providing land grants to settlers through programs like the Homestead Act, further ensuring that expansion was anything but chaotic. Additionally, the military maintained a significant presence in the West, enforcing law and order as settlements grew. Forts were established to protect settlers, and sheriffs or marshals ensured rules were followed. While some legendary outlaws did exist, their exploits were often embellished in dime novels and newspapers to captivate readers and sell stories. In truth, most people living in the West prioritized building stable communities, not engaging in shootouts or vigilante justice. The idea of a wild and lawless frontier is far more fiction than fact. And what about the stereotypical cowboy? Spoiler alert. The West wasn't just white men on horseback. It was incredibly diverse. Mexican vaqueros, Native Americans, Chinese railroad workers, and black cowboys all played essential roles. Cowboys as we know them were a multicultural mashup, not a monolithic figure. Mexican vaqueros, for instance, were the original cowboys, introducing essential techniques like cattle herding, roping, and horseback riding long before the image was co-opted in American culture. Many of the tools, terms, and traditions associated with cowboy life, like the lasso, sombrero, and even the iconic cowboy hat, originated with these skilled horsemen. Similarly, black cowboys, who made up an estimated 25% of the workforce, contributed significantly to the development of the ranching industry, often facing discrimination despite their expertise and dedication. The contributions of Chinese immigrants were equally vital. They played a major role in building the Transcontinental Railroad, a cornerstone of Western expansion, while enduring harsh working conditions and widespread prejudice. Native Americans too were deeply involved in the economy of the West, often adapting to ranching and trade as their traditional ways of life were forcibly disrupted. The true West was a rich tapestry of cultures working together under challenging circumstances, a far cry from the narrow, romanticized version portrayed in movies and folklore. So, how did we get these myths? It started with larger-than-life figures like Buffalo Bill, who turned their stories into entertainment. Then, Hollywood got involved, crafting tales of white heroes and dramatic duels. Spaghetti westerns from Italy added even more flair, turning cowboys into mythical anti-heroes. Buffalo Bill's Wild West show was one of the first major culprits in spreading these exaggerated stories. Combining real historical events with sensationalized reenactments, the show featured staged battles, trick shooting, and romanticized portrayals of cowboys and Native Americans. These performances toured extensively, captivating audiences in the US and Europe, and cementing a distorted view of the West as a land of constant action and heroics. Hollywood took this foundation and amplified it, creating larger-than-life characters like John Wayne's stoic cowboy or Clint Eastwood's gritty anti-hero. These films prioritized drama over accuracy, depicting cowboys as lone wanderers with a moral code and a quick draw. Spaghetti westerns, produced in Italy, leaned even further into stylized action and mystique, giving us the archetype of the brooding, enigmatic gunslinger. While entertaining, these portrayals reduced the complexity of the West to a series of tropes, overshadowing the diverse and often challenging realities of the people who lived there. The true story of the West is far more complex. It was about conquest, survival, and diverse cultures building communities under tough conditions. It wasn't a single hero's tale. It was a collective effort marked by resilience, tragedy, and innovation. The West was shaped by a combination of determined settlers, government policies, and the ingenuity of people from different backgrounds. Settlers faced harsh landscapes, unpredictable weather, and limited resources, relying on both their own perseverance and the collective support of their communities to survive. Towns were often built from the ground up, requiring cooperation among farmers, ranchers, tradespeople, and laborers. Despite the challenges, these communities thrived, giving rise to new industries, infrastructure, and innovations that laid the foundation for modern America. At the same time, this progress came at a great cost. The forced removal and displacement of Native American tribes left a lasting scar, as did the exploitation of immigrant workers and marginalized groups who contributed significantly to the development of the West. The real story of the frontier is one of contradictions, of dreams and ambitions fulfilled alongside deep injustices. Understanding this complexity doesn't diminish the West's significance. It enriches our appreciation of the resilience, diversity, and innovation that define this pivotal chapter in history. The Wild West we know is more myth than reality. There's no harm in enjoying these stories for entertainment, but let's be clear. Misrepresenting history has real consequences. The stories we tell shape how we see the present. So, let's make sure we tell the whole story, the real story. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments which myth surprised you the most.